Interrupt the honourable member. His time has expired. Call the Honourable Craig Foss.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. And so says David. A sermon from the Mount, Mr. Cunliffe. Good to see you back in the House. Suggest next time you stand a little closer to the razor, though. Next time. A few things have changed over there in the Labour Party, but some things don't change whatsoever, Mr. Speaker. Although I do note there have been some changes, although listening to the speeches, I don't know. I think some of them maybe have been written about August last year at least. Because what did we see the other day, Mr. Speaker? Or was it just yesterday? They've changed leaders over in the Labour Party. That's fine. Mr. Shearer's now leading the assembled masses over there, if you like. But I did see a picture of him being led by a poodle in the paper, Mr. Speaker, or online somewhere. So that's not particularly encouraging, I think, for his leadership thus far. And Mr. Speaker, first of all, though, Mr. Speaker, I do digress, and apologies to member. The acknowledgements of other members for the election result, congrats and otherwise to the Government National Party for its winning of the election. Thank you, they are taken on board, but I also return the compliments to those that I contested in my election of Tuki, who ran a pretty good campaign and kept it clean, and I think respect was gained for all parties concerned. I also welcome new members to the Parliament and welcome back returning members. I'm sure we'll get to know some of the new members a bit more, and look forward to seeing you from time to time, or particularly around the House. And I, for one, quite enjoy discussions outside of this chamber around committees and things like that. Mr. Speaker, November 26, it does seem quite some time ago now, but I'd just like to point out that if one looks at the map of the North Island, say from Wairarapa all the way up somewhere up near Auckland, it's a nice shade of blue. National Party blue. I feel a little bit sorry for the Honourable Parakura Horomia, who has quite a burden on his broad shoulders to look after that whole part of the country, Mr. Speaker, but the people have spoken. The people spoke on November 26, and they resoundingly rejected the policies of the Labour opposition that they put up to the public. They resoundingly rejected those policies to the tune of the lowest polling result, I think it is, for the Labour Party ever, 27%, or you could say 73% against, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the issue there with that one is. 27, did I miss a 0.5% or something? I don't know, I'll give it to you. But, Mr. Speaker, 27%. The people of New Zealand, Mr. Speaker, gave this government a mandate. They gave this government the permission to continue working towards such a brighter future. They gave us permission to continue to manage the country's finances in such a better way to prudently manage every single taxpayer cent, every single dollar, so as to get the best outcome possible, because we fully honestly acknowledge where that dollar comes from in the first instance, Mr. Speaker. As we all know, it comes from taxpayers in one way, shape or form, Mr. Speaker. And as we saw, previous speakers here were talking about structural issues in the economy. Well, yes, we were in government for the previous 3 years, but much of what we're still trying to tidy up was set in chain from about 2004 to 2007-ish, when government spending, government revenue doubled. It is right, but I'm responding to the other speeches that were written last year. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand voted for the mixed ownership model, Mr. Speaker. Now, interestingly, with all the rhetoric aside, to quote the former Labour finance spokesman, Mr. Cunliffe, and I think the Honourable Trevor Mallard, I think when he was Commerce Minister or thereabouts, they used the term along the lines of their ambition was to unleash the power and potential of state-owned enterprises, Mr. Speaker. A speech Mr. Cunliffe gave to Victoria University, November 2010, I think it was, they used that exact term. Funnily enough, I think it got taken out of some online versions, but unleash. Well, yes, I think that's what we may be doing. I can't quite understand why they're arguing about it still now, having ignored the mandate and what New Zealand said. Because if I believe, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, if I listen carefully to what Mr. Parker said, He essentially said, well, the National Party's victory at the election was some kind of statistical error. Because of only an aberration, because there's only been one other one-term government where, unfortunately, Honourable Mr Norman Kirk passed away, Mr Speaker. But really? I mean, I actually fully encourage members opposite to continue down that vein, because really? If I recall rhetoric before the election, apparently it was about policies. I do remember that bit. So if it was about policies, and Labor put their policies out there, and National put our policies out there to the public, and the public voted only 27% or so for the opposition's policy, think it through a little bit. Remember the old GST on fruit and veggies? Perhaps they've thrown it out, to be fair. I don't know about that. I'll be interested to hear. Remember the first 5k off your PAYE? I don't know if they've thrown that one out. Would be interested to hear, Mr Speaker. They've changed leader, they've changed some of the front bench around, to be fair, and good luck to them all, Mr Speaker. But I'm looking forward to what they have to say in that space. Mr Speaker, on the note, I would also particularly like to acknowledge, in my new role as Minister of Commerce, I do intend to work with closely as I can with Mr Cosgrove, who's the new Commerce spokesman over there, continuing the work, the heavy regulatory reform work that Honourable Simon Power started of necessity in the last 3 years, but I fully acknowledge was assisted by and generally in a bipartisan way across the House. And hopefully we can continue down that track, Mr Speaker. I look forward to working with them quite closely, where and when possible. I'm sure there'll be policy differences, but on the whole, I suspect we're all heading to the same place as far as that regulation and legislation coming up is concerned. Mr Speaker, I noted before about a mixed ownership model. I'm also interested to hear, so I noted what Mr Cunliffe had said, Mr Mallard had said previously, but the new leader of the opposition, I do recall, I think from when he was to be the candidate for Mount Albert, I don't know, was that 2-3 years ago or so, and his history, and I think he wrote a paper, and I think it was contesting or proposing that defence forces were contracted out. I think it was with Sandline or something like that. So I don't really mind. I haven't read the paper. I was just thinking about this the other day. So I don't really mind, but I'm just quite interested to hear if it was good for that member to write a paper or thesis about that and propose it, fair enough, then if he's changed mind or reconcile that with his current position on the mixed ownership model and as we try to unleash the potential of New Zealand and the Crown's balance sheet, Mr Speaker, to try and realise our awesome future. Mr Speaker, New Zealanders see on TV every night what's going on in Europe. We see what's happening in southern Europe, across Greece, across Spain, etc. I do note the previous Labour Party leader in one of his speeches essentially announced that the global financial crisis was over. I don't think he may have changed his mind, to be fair, Mr Speaker. The threat of what's going on over in Europe, the threat to this country, regardless of the reason for the moment, that's indebted to the tune of $180 billion, to the point where we are reliant on the world's capital markets to fund our aspirations, regardless of the policy stuff around that. Actually, Mr Speaker, it's right that New Zealanders and this government are prudent and very cautious to try and avoid down here what we see is going on up there. Because if we don't, Mr Speaker, unemployment will indeed go through the roof if we let the economy, if the government finances are out of control. If that in fact happens, interest rates will go through the roof, inflation will go through the roof, the whole thing will start to collapse, Mr Speaker, and little old New Zealand, doing its best to try and punch above our exporting weight around the world, we actually have to do so well, even so much better, I think, than many people realise, just to tread water as we try and realise our expectations as we start to grow our exports up to particularly grow in Asia. And again, I freely acknowledge generally the bipartisan nature of free trade agreements which have been signed or ratified by different parties and ministers of trade and prime ministers over there. Absolutely, and that's great. You know, when we exit New Zealand, we generally speak as one, and most members understand how necessary that is to help pay for our aspirations. I heard a speaker say this quite recently. It's simply this, Mr. Speaker. New Zealanders, I think they understand that if we want better schools, if we want better health, If we want those things that we expect of an OECD developed country in 2012, do you know how we do it? We simply have to export more, grow more.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. I call Sue Williams, CO.
Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. That last speaker